4. Faith no more. I began to feel defeated by life and by my circumstances. I was at the point where I lost my faith in human beings to be open and honest with each other. I lost my faith in humanity. In losing my faith in humanity, I questioned my faith in God. There was only one other time I can recall when I had lost my faith in God, and that was when my blood family of origin broke their promise to help me take care of my grandparents. I stopped speaking and interacting with my family 5 years earlier. At that time, I felt that God had abandoned me and didn't care about me. Filled with despair and depressed, I viewed the world in a dark and seedy light. I felt as though my naive and innocent view of the world was shattered. I only saw darkness and ugliness. I had always viewed people as inherently good and that everything happens for a reason. I had lost that. During this time, I had a friend called Devlin. She was my best friend with whom I spoke daily. She tried to help lift my spirits and was there for me when I decided to leave my husband and divorce him. I was there for her when she needed to talk and needed support. Devlin mentioned that she had a friend who does Reiki, which is energy healing. I did a little research on Reiki and decided to sit on the idea as an option. I was giving it some serious thought. After my discussion with Devlin about Reiki, I had another one of those dreams. A dream with a message like the one about dying within 6 months to a year. The message from this dream was for me to give Reiki a lot of thought, as it would not be an easy thing to do. The dream focused heavily on the fact that I would see things and learn about myself that I may not want to know, and it may be very emotionally difficult for me to go through. It was an intuitive warning to me to be prepared to endure a difficult period. I finally decided to contact Devlin's friend, Trisha, through Facebook, and I told her that I wanted to move forward with doing a Reiki session. Trisha lived in Idaho, so it was decided she would send long-distance Reiki. We set up an appointment for 9 a.m. on the Friday of that week. She asked that I believe in a higher power. I was okay with this, except I was questioning the strength of my faith. When I was much younger, I had a very strong relationship with God. I wasn't much of a church goer and never belonged to a church. I had more of a one-on-one relationship with God. Trisha asked me to also focus on the areas that I wanted healing for the Reiki session. I decided on the depression I was feeling from having lost my faith and seeing the world as cold and dark. I also wanted to get out of the rut I felt my life had been in for years, and to be more focused. On the Thursday night before my Reiki session, I was out eating dinner with my friend Cindy when Facebook Messenger messages came through on my phone. Firstly, Trisha asked if we could move the time to 7. Then, my friend Devlin messaged me and wanted to know if I was going to make an appointment with Trisha to do a Reiki session. I told her yes, I was going to do Reiki. Devlin messaged me that she was going to tell Trisha that I wanted to do the Reiki. I sat there shaking my head and thinking to myself, what the fuck? What the fuck is she thinking? I was wondering why she feels that she needs to intervene with me doing this. I was obviously very capable of making an appointment on my own. I felt intruded upon. It felt like my friend was crossing a big line with, and it pissed me off. Was she trying to run my life? She had overstepped her bounds. I sat there telling Cindy what was going on, and she had the same response I did. I messaged Devlin and told her that I had already made an appointment for the following morning. There was a good reason for me to be pissed off at Devlin. I had already felt that she had been trying to control me in some ways. She had recently told me that I shouldn't be friends with Cindy. She also told me that I should unfriend Parker on Facebook and never speak to him again. One day, she had come to my house and found it necessary for some reason to tell me that I had clothes in my dryer. She had been getting underneath my skin. The Reiki thing was one more of those things that she was telling me to do. Why was it such a big deal for her to feel that she needed to go this far? The following morning, on June 2nd, 2017, I had my first Reiki session. I didn't feel anything different at the time. I was doing my morning routine and had a phone conversation with a client. Later in the day, I felt tired and worn out. My eyes hurt and they were burning. Saturday evening, Cindy and I decided that we would get a manicure and pedicure, then afterwards go have dinner. By the time I got my manicure, I was completely exhausted and ready to go to bed at 5 in the evening. I'm sitting there looking at Cindy, who just spent the day painting her bedroom after having chemotherapy, while I was receiving Reiki. I thought I should have been the one running circles around Cindy. Over the course of the next week, I was feeling more and more ill. I felt like I was detoxing from heroin, which I have never been addicted to and never done in my life. I was nauseated, had stomach knots and pains, chills, feverish, flushed, and I wasn't sleeping well at all. I also felt very empty and lost. I felt like from my stomach up, all my feelings and emotions had been stripped from me. I felt like I had even lost my sense of humor. Devlin called me that weekend and asked how I was feeling. She started to tell me that Trisha had done an intuitive reading on me and had told Devlin all about it. I asked more and more questions. Devlin answered, but when I went deeper and deeper into my questioning, she suddenly became confused about what Trisha had said and suddenly forgot what was said. Why would Trisha tell Devlin about my intuitive reading and not me? After all, it was my Reiki session that she did the intuitive reading on. I intuitively knew that Devlin was keeping something from me. Devlin told me that I needed to get over my trust issues, depression, and anxiety, or whatever that was. She told me that I was going to need to have many more Reiki sessions. She asked me if I had visions or heard angelic voices. She told me that I needed to talk to my mom or a psychiatrist or psychologist because I was going to need one. I told her no. Why did I tell her no? Well, there again, she was trying to tell me what to do. How would she know if I had depression, trust issues, and anxiety? I don't believe I had ever displayed these things to her or others. Why would she tell me to talk to my mom, with whom I hadn't spoken with in 5 years? Why would I need a psychiatrist or psychologist? Why would she say such things to me without an explanation? Why was she trying to be mean? Was she really trying to help me? Why would I need to seek mental help? What did she know that I didn't know? Why did she feel the need to tell me that I needed to get over my depression, anxiety, and trust issues? Was that something that was in my intuitive reading? I had never been diagnosed with any issues. I knew I was a little depressed with my view of the world and losing faith in my humanity. I had just gone through a divorce and broke up with a boyfriend, and then I was catfished. I had a lot of anxiety through all of that, but ongoing depression and anxiety was not an issue for me. I'd had it with Devlin. A couple of days later, I saw her at our monthly bunko, and she came up to me and asked me how I was feeling. I was feeling like crap, and had been since the Reiki. I was starting to wake up at 3 in the morning. I was exhausted, felt lost, and very empty. I was angry with her, and at this point, didn't trust her. She looked me straight in the eyes with this weird, shit-eating grin on her face, and told me I was going to be just fine and that I was going to feel so much better. Of course, again, I am thinking, what the fuck does she know? I am a grown-ass adult who knows that I am going to be just fine and that I would feel better sooner or later. The day after our meeting at Bunko, I woke up intuitively knowing, within every fiber of my being, that Devlin was absolutely keeping something from me. I was angry. Every inch of my body was shaking from the rage I felt towards Devlin and Trisha, because by this time, I also felt that they both had done something that they shouldn't have done involving my Reiki session. I wanted to hit something, but I couldn't, as I had tried to tend to the business of showing a client property. This client was not an easy client to help find a home, which seems to be the case with all first-time home buyers. I was out with this client, leaving one property and in the process of going to the next home. I knew exactly where the next property was, but was so out of it with all the rage that I was feeling that I thought it would be best if I put the address in my navigation app. In the past, I have had my phone act up when I was excited. In the past, it was when I was helping another client crunch the numbers on payments. This time, it was a little different. I was very angry. If you had seen me, I probably looked like one of those cartoon characters that turns red and has steam coming out of their ears. This time, my phone navigation app was trying to take me in a circle back to where I had started from. That was a crazy experience that left an impression on me. If that wasn't weird, the following day, I was working in the yard. I had been outside for some time, and when I came inside, my phone lit up. Then my computer lit up. I did not have the notifications or messages coming in on either. I noted it as strange. Then, I had been charging a power tool battery, and when I went to unplug the charger, it stayed lit for more than a minute. Some people may not look at this as anything significant. They were trying to tell me I was right about Devlin and Trisha. I have had things like this happen to me before. Years ago, when I lived in South Lake Tahoe and worked at Bass Shoes, I had been speaking to my mother on the phone about my trip back home to visit. I told her I would just talk to her when I saw her. I was the only person in the store and hadn't opened the store yet. I went to use the restroom. When I was in the restroom, a clipboard fell off the wall, and there was no way for it to just fall off the wall. I started to feel very nervous and had an intuitive gut feeling. I sensed that something was going to happen that day, and it had something to do with my mother. I called my mother back and told her that I wasn't going to call her again, but I think that something is going to happen today and that I think it is something to do with her. I asked if she would call me back if something significant happens. I want to say within 3 hours, my mother called me back and told me that my half-sister Tara had called her. This was very significant, as my mother had put my sister up for adoption when she was born and had never had contact with her since. My sister found her biological mother. So, I guess you can say that I have had some sort of spidey sense, or senses. Around the same time I had been living in Tahoe, I had a roommate, Stacy. She was out of town working during the week and would be home on the weekends. I had been gone a lot too, as I would often go and stay with my boyfriend down in Carson City. One evening, I felt a presence that I had felt before when I was in my apartment. It was a little unnerving. I felt uncomfortable because I felt like I was being watched. I finally asked Stacy if she felt a presence. I didn't expect to get the answer I got. Stacy proceeded to tell me that she'd had this presence you can call a ghost or spirit with her since she was a little girl. My point in telling you my past occurrences is that I have had these types of intuitive experiences in the past. This time, my spidey senses had been telling me that Devlin and Trisha had, in fact, done me wrong. It wasn't just that Trisha and Devlin had a conversation about me that Trisha had shared my intuitive reading with Devlin, or that Trisha and Devlin refused to tell me everything about the intuitive reading. Intuitively, I felt that there was something beyond all those things. I sensed that they had done something else, and it wasn't my will or God's will. It was their will upon me. Since this, I have become a Reiki master, and I know that in doing Reiki on someone, you always have the best and highest intentions for the client. Even if you love the person and have an interest in seeing them heal, you never put your own intentions into the Reiki. This is something I have been very cautious about when dealing with clients. It's always for their best and highest good. I considered this as a form of ego, when a healer puts their own intentions into a healing session. That weekend, I messaged back and forth with Devlin many times. I had messaged Trisha as well about the conversation between her and Devlin. I asked Trisha about my intuitive reading and asked why she wouldn't share it with me. She and Devlin held to the reason being it was just a conversation between two girlfriends. Devlin would argue over terminology and words I was using when I asked her questions about what Trisha had picked up in my intuitive reading. I wasn't getting the answers I was seeking from either of them. I'd had it with Devlin. This was the last straw that broke the camel's back for me. I decided that I would just cut her out of my life, and I blocked her on Facebook and on my phone. Little did I know that Devlin had a couple of more Facebook accounts. When she realized that I had blocked her, she used another one of those accounts to contact me. She wanted to have her say. She wanted me to know that she felt that she was giving her whole self to help me heal. She said she had taken time from herself and others to help me. This was a surprise to me. I didn't see things the same way Devlin had. I really thought that our friendship was give and take. She felt that our relationship was very one-sided and that I was doing all the taking in the relationship. If she didn't have time to talk with me or spend time with me, I would have understood. The thing is, Devlin never once expressed to me that she had to tend to other things at all. But now I was receiving all this backlash from her. Devlin also expressed that she felt that I wasn't appreciative of Trisha doing Reiki for me. Devlin had told me Trisha had her own problems and was very busy, but she took time out to do my Reiki. I really would have understood if Trisha didn't have the time or energy to do a Reiki session for me. I wasn't pushing or pressing Trisha or Devlin for a Reiki session. I had wanted to do it for 2 months anyhow. I wasn't in a big hurry. Waiting a little longer wouldn't have mattered to me, and there were other people in my area who did Reiki. Devlin went on to tell me she had been having nightmares that I was trying to destroy her, that she was sick to her stomach, and that she couldn't eat or sleep. I found it interesting that she couldn't eat or sleep. I found it interesting that those were the exact same symptoms that I had been feeling with my detox. I didn't have nightmares. I found it very odd that Devlin was having these symptoms. Sure, she was upset with me as I was with her. But the thing is that Devlin was an empath and had other psychic abilities. Devlin had recently told me that she thought I had ghosts in my office. Why would she know this and even bring it up with me? Why would she pick these things up? Was she trying to pick things up about me, and why? It made me feel uncomfortable. She had only been in my office once to pick up a key. At one time, I had thought there might have been a ghost in my office too. I never really got that usual intuitive spidey sense of a ghost, though. It was more of an eerie feeling when in a big space by yourself. There were a couple of doors that would rattle, but I concluded that it was the wind and not a ghost. Devlin shared with me that she was personally working with Trisha on grief she hadn't processed from the loss of one of her brothers. She said that she had not allowed the cord between her brother and herself to be cut when he passed, and that she recently cut that cord and felt so much better letting go. When we have relationships with other people, places, and situations, cords are created and attached organically and naturally by our energies. In Devlin's case with her brother, she never allowed that cord to be detached. Normally, when somebody passes, the cords are cut, because the deceased goes into another plane of existence, different than ours here on Earth. Devlin never allowed it to happen. She held on as though her brother was still alive. I was reeling from Devlin and Trisha's behavior. I was livid, because I felt violated. I felt I had just had my soul fucked with. An intuitive reading is something I see as more private than any medical file. I didn't sign a HIPAA form, but the information Trisha shared with Devlin was more private than what's covered in a HIPAA form. I felt that these two spiritually abused me. I felt as though it added one more thing to the list of things I had to heal from. I had recently taken reflexology and sacral-cranial therapy courses. In those courses, we had discussed how it isn't necessary to apply a great deal of pressure. If you apply too much force on the body can resist the pressure, which can result in an injury. It's not just the body that resists when something is forced upon it. The soul responds in the same way. They didn't think anything was wrong with what they did. What was the motive? Did they have an agenda? What were they hiding from me? That was it between me and Devlin. I didn't need a friend like her. She had been making me feel bad about myself. She thought she knew what was best for me. She wanted me to live my life according to her. I couldn't, and I will never live my life according to somebody else. Although I wasn't going to live my life according to her, I decided to reach out to my mother and Parker to see if there was any validity in what Devlin was telling me. I wrote my mother a letter. After I read it through, it turned out to be about trust. It wasn't my intention, but I suppose subconsciously that is how I was feeling about my relationship with my mother. I felt she didn't trust me. It didn't make sense when I had written the letter, but it makes a lot more sense now. I also wrote Parker a long text message and told him that he had really hurt me. He had not only attacked me professionally as a real estate agent, but he attacked me personally. He had attacked my integrity and honesty. Parker had texted me a month prior, saying that I had sold him a piece of shit and that I knew it. He was insinuating that I had sold him a piece of shit intentionally. I had called him up right after that text and let him have it. I told him that he needed to take responsibility for his decision and that I thought he knew me better than that. He knew he was wrong for doing that to me. I was only a real estate agent. Inspections were out of my scope of knowledge. I wasn't trained as an inspector. He had refused to get inspections when he bought it. It felt good to stand up for myself, but when I heard Parker at the end of the phone, and he was speechless. It was Parker pulling my ponytail again. I had never spoken to him like that. I felt bad for him, but, in my opinion, one of Parker's problems in life is not taking responsibility for his own actions and blaming other people for his position in life. My insomnia was getting worse. All week, I searched the internet for any possible answers about Reiki going wrong, empaths, and energy vampires. I was convinced by my research that Devlin was an energy vampire. I wasn't so sure I was an energy vampire or not. When I would go into work during this time, I would try to avoid contact with other people for fear that I was sucking their energy or that they might suck my energy. I was researching energy vampires. Part of me didn't feel comfortable with researching energy vampires. It's a bit crazy. Knowing that Devlin was an empath and that she had made comments about my office having a ghost, I wasn't sure about Devlin's abilities and her motives. I was sensing that Devlin had been able to intuitively tap into my feelings and thoughts. And that sounds even crazier, but it's what I felt was going on. I lit sage and performed rituals to clear my house of Devlin's energy, any negative energy. I blessed and protected my home and myself. A few days after I had cleared my home, I felt a presence outside my front door. The security screen door rattled. I got the impression that this was Devlin. She was wanting to get into my space, and she was pissed off that she couldn't come in. I think she rattled the door to scare me. There was no logical or rational reason for that door to rattle the way it did. It was the middle of summer. I have 2 security screen doors, one on the front door and one on the back door. These doors had never rattled like that. Since then, I have paid close attention to these doors, and they have never rattled even when there were high winds. I started searching the internet for cord cutting, like Devlin told me she had to do with her brother. I was learning a lot about spiritual stuff on the internet. I felt I needed to cut the cord with her. I was doing ritual after ritual of cord cutting. Nothing seemed to be working. I felt she was using her intuitive gifts to see what I was doing. I had no idea how to protect myself. I decided that I was going to put Devlin in a big, clear, bouncy ball in my mind. Whenever I felt her presence come near me, I would imagine that I hit this ball with both of my hands and that she was sent back to where she came from. This seemed to work for me. After a few weeks, I stopped feeling her presence around me. I have known about energy vampires for a while, but I read more in depth about them in my research. Most people have encountered these people, but may not know what they are called. An energy vampire is essentially somebody that sucks the energy out of you. You probably have been around an energy vampire before. Think about it. Have you ever felt really drained of energy after having been around somebody? One minute, you feel all energetic, and then, after being with them, you feel like you need to take a nap. 3 weeks after my Reiki session, I still wasn't feeling myself. I knew that whatever was wrong with me wasn't a physical illness, like a cold, flu, or allergies. I knew a medical doctor couldn't prescribe anything that would treat what I was sick with. I would entertain taking a trip to the doctor's office just to rule out any medical issue. I believed that whatever was wrong with me was something spiritual. I knew that it had everything to do with what Devlin and Trisha did. I went to have a chakra healing and balance done by Lynn Ross, a local woman who I had thought about going to initially instead of going to Trisha. Upon meeting Lynn at the front of her shop, I told her I thought that there was something spiritually wrong with me. She looked me in the eyes, and I knew she could see what was going on with me. Lynn took me to one of her session rooms. It was dimly lit. Light beige linen curtains hung from the ceiling, creating a divider between areas of the room. As I walked in, a chaise lounge with an Afghan on it was right in front of me. Beyond the curtains, a massage table sat in the middle of the room, and there was a buffet with shelving where essential oils and crystals lined the shelves against the wall. A picture of Buddha hung on the wall and a statue of Ganesh on the floor. A small table with a lamp and 2 chairs sat on the corner near the window. Lynn sat me down in one of the chairs. She wanted to chat with me a little bit before she started the healing session. She told me about her background in healing. She asked if I had ever heard of an energy vampire, and I nodded and said yes. She told me nothing will shock her. She had seen it a lot as a healer. She has seen people levitate, the table levitate, and relatives from the other side come watch and wave. I was still skeptical of the supernatural. I was skeptical as to how this chakra healing and balancing could help me. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't ask any questions. I just wanted to feel better. I wanted my sense of humor back, and I didn't want to feel crappy anymore. She told me that she was going to write things down as she worked on me, and I agreed to it. I laid down on the table and was given headphones to put on. Lynn placed a piece of muslin fabric over my eyes and had used an essential oil for aromatherapy. She told me she was going to put on a guided meditation for me to listen to. I began to cry. I had no idea why I was crying. The meditation was focusing on one chakra at a time. A couple of minutes before the meditation would move from one chakra to the next, I felt an internal surge of movement, like a guttural wave. It was as though my mind and body knew or anticipated the switch and reacted to it before it happened. I was still not completely convinced of this hocus-pocus stuff, and if it would work for me. At one point, I had peeked from underneath the fabric over my eyes to the left of me. It looked like the door was open, and I saw a ladder in the hallway. Did Lynn have to get the ladder because I levitated? I wasn't at all sure of what was going on. A few minutes later, I looked downward. I was taken aback by what I saw. I was seeing this with my own 2 sober eyes. Lynn had this radiant blue light illuminating and emanating from her hands and was working on my stomach area. At that point, I knew it wasn't hocus pocus. I closed my eyes and went back to the meditation. When the guided meditation had reached the final chakra, Lynn quietly but sternly said, "Julie, we are almost done." I had been concentrating on the meditation and felt a little out of it. As I was becoming more aware of what was going on in the room, I felt like the table was being set on the floor, or that 2 corners of the table had been kicked. Did I really want to know if I levitated the table? No, not really. What does that mean anyway? What does it mean to levitate a table? Did I really need to know? Did I just see a ladder in the hallway? Blue light coming from this lady's hands. The sensation of a guttural wave surged within me. Lynn asked me if I felt anything. I told her that my feet tingled. I felt like a weight had been lifted off me. I don't think I was completely telling her the truth, and I think she had picked up on that. I had an aha moment as I was editing this. I get it now. I was referring to the guttural wave surging in my body. It was an intuitive reaction my mind and body had to the guided meditation she was asking about. As I climbed down from the table, I felt groggy. I can't remember where I was, if I was standing or sitting in the chair by the window. I remember Lynn going over the things she had written down. The page was filled with different things. These are only some of the things we spoke about. She said that I was very intuitive and that I didn't listen to my intuition. I had suffered a relationship loss. I suffered from a lot of loss and grief. I had much sadness and childhood pain. I didn't have much self-esteem. And I didn't speak my truth. The one thing she asked me about was if I remember any specific childhood trauma. I quickly thought about it. I thought about a reoccurring memory of my mother's father doing something sexual to me which I had never thought of as being true. Then there was the death of my great-grandfather Larry and not being able to go to his funeral. And then my first spiritual experience. I settled on sharing my first spiritual experience as it happened when I was somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, and it was somewhat traumatizing. Once I told her of the spiritual experience, Lynn asked more questions. Where did this happen? And is the house still standing? It happened here in Modesto. In fact, my entire original family currently lived in the house. When I told her these things, I sensed that she was very disgusted and sickened that the house still existed, and that my entire family still lived there. This led me to believe that the childhood trauma I shared with her wasn't the one she was referring to. I am pretty sure that Lynn didn't buy the spiritual trauma experience. She said that it would come to me in the next couple of days. I felt nervous and unsettled. I just wanted to run out of the place, but I had to maintain my composure and pay for my session. Lynn very kindly offered to make me a copy of what she had written down in the session. While I waited, I checked my phone for any calls or messages. The first contact in over 5 years, my mother had called me and left a voicemail. She had received my letter. She said to call her when I had time. I left Lynn's unsure if this healing would help me or not. I did not know what to expect. I knew that this was a very different healing experience from that of my Reiki experience. I felt more confident that I had come away with a piece of paper with these things written down. I had some point of reference of what I needed to work on. I knew I had to work on those things, whereas my Reiki experience seemed tainted and unfulfilling. This experience had given me some validation that spiritual healers could share their intuitive findings with their patients. During the days following my chakra healing and balancing, I was still waking up at 3 a.m. and was struggling with exhaustion. However, I noticed a significant change at bedtime. In the past, I would go to bed with such pain in my heart that I would cry myself to sleep nearly every night. The heavy sadness in my heart had lifted and I was no longer crying myself to sleep. The same day that I had the chakra healing and balancing, I had called my mother back, and we talked for a short time. Sunday was Father's Day, and I asked if it would be okay if I came to visit them. As I had mentioned prior, I hadn't spoken to my family in about 5 years. I didn't know what to expect. I did miss them very much. I missed having my family of origin. For years, I had hated hearing other people tell me that I should talk to my family, that I should talk to my mother and father because they gave me life. Other people were giving me a guilt trip about not talking with my family. I had already had a guilt trip over it, and by other people saying something to me, it was insult to injury. People didn't understand what happened, and when I tried to explain, their reaction was that it doesn't matter. I had always second-guessed myself over my decision to no longer speak with my family. You know, the normal or prescribed rules that are placed on us by society, how we should feel, think, and behave. Just as Lynn had said, I would recall the traumatic childhood memory, and that more would come. It was that horrible memory that I wasn't giving any truth to. The memory of possibly being sexually abused by my grandfather while on a trip to visit my mother's family in Canada. I was in the process of recalling little flashes of memory and was able to piece them together. When I was able to remember how I felt after he had abused me, I was able to see my 3-year-old self crying hysterically on the floor of his office and then in his car. I remember not having my underwear and not being able to cover my butt. I didn't want anybody to see my butt. I wanted my underwear. I was wearing a dress and felt exposed. I know as an adult that my 3-year-old self wanted to cover up the shame, guilt, and horrific thing that had just happened to me. As I was in my grandfather's car pleading to have my underwear back, he was insisting that I believed and say that I had peed my pants. I remember something running wet from my bottom and running down my legs. It wasn't pee. I wasn't going along with what my grandfather was saying. Him telling me to lie made what had just happened to me that much more traumatic. As an adult, I was finally able to tie my emotions to the flashback memory I had for years. I was able to accept that this reoccurring flash of memory had happened to me. I was still having a hard time coming to terms with it. I was having trouble accepting the fact that I had repressed memories. I never believed that repressed memories were possible. Father's Day was on my doorstep. I had to work the morning shift answering the phones, and the woman covering the afternoon shift had arrived early. I asked if she would mind if I left early because I was going to visit my family for the first time in 5 years. She agreed. I called my mother to see if it was okay to come a little earlier. I was nervous, excited, and apprehensive about seeing my family. I knew that my brother Stephen would probably not speak to me at all if he was around. I suspected that my father was still holding an undue grudge toward me. My grandparents had chosen me to act on their behalf as their attorney at fact, trustee, and executrix, rather than my father.